Hello and welcome. My name is Renzo Palmisano, and today we're going to be talking about the movie render graph. This tutorial is aimed for people that have intermediate to advanced knowledge of Unreal, and this is because some of the terminology that we will be using might be a bit more complex than normal. We will be also using or making reference to the sequencer and also to the movie render queue. So again, this is some of the knowledge I will be expecting from you. However, you're free to watch it and hopefully you can learn something from this. Right, so let's start. My learning outcomes for this project are as the following. So I'm going to discuss the importance and difference of the movie render graph and the movie render queue. We're going to design a simple movie render graph pipeline just for rendering some layers, right? So our purpose today is to have a sort and stand, and we're going to render the sort and the stand separately so you can edit them later on as you see fit. From that, we're going to create the render using a PNG sequence. And again, this is only for the purposes of quick and easy renders on the tutorial, since I will not be pausing or editing this video so you can see the whole process. And finally, we're going to be discussing some of the outputs and some troubleshoot the issues that you may encounter during the process of this. Of course, I've made some tables for you. Hopefully they will be useful and they will be at the end, so we'll cover them anyways. So how this is going to work, I'm going to talk a bit about what movie render graphs are, some comparisons that we were saying. Then we're going to go into demonstration. It will be quite simple. And then finally, we'll just wrap up the session. Okay, so let's start. So again, the movie render graph is Unreal's new advanced render pipeline. It provides modular, node-based control over rendering, replacing the older movie render queue. It was introduced in Unreal 5.4 when it was experimental. We're now on 5.7, and what we're going to be using today will be 5.7, so things have gotten a bit easier, thankfully. Again, the MRG offers per layer rendering, automation, and deep integration with Unreal scene data. So, some context. So the movie render queue is preset based. It does quick renders, and it has limited flexibility. So if you're using movie render queue, this might be for you. So the movie render graph is node based. Think about blueprints or material nodes, same thing. Supports complex multiple pass workflows, conditional logic, and per layer CVARs. Some advantages, again, is the flexibility that you get. You can have layer-specific overrides, automation hooks, and it's future-proofing yourself. Okay? If you're coming from movie render queue, some things that you might want to keep in mind. So temporal AA is now a node and is under a sampling method. Resolution override will be under your global output settings, where you have a lot more in there, such as your frame rate, the size of your render, the output directory, etc. And your file formats now are nodes. So as you can see on the image, you have BMP, EXR, EXR sequence, and multi-layer, JPEGs, PNGs, WAV output, and then your H.264 MP4. Okay. So how will this fit in your pipeline? So my hope is that you will use your sequencer, then go into your movie render graph, use EXR or whatever mode that you want to use, and then it will go straight to your post tools, right? It will read level sequence, camera cuts, frame rate, visibility. Outputs, again, as we were mentioned earlier, EXR, PNG, JPEG, MP4, ProRes, the NXHR. So global control nodes affects the entire render. Your render layer nodes isolate scene elements. Per layer nodes control format, renderer, and passes. Modifier nodes change appearance or visibility. Utility nodes, execution nodes, logic, automation, and metadata, sorry. Again, as I mentioned earlier, from your material or your blueprinting, it goes from right to left. Closest will override anything, right? At least one render layer chain is required. So the Movie Render Graph pulls its content from the currently active level sequence in Unreal Editor. It honors camera cuts, visibility tracks, and animation timing exactly as set in the sequencer. Frame rate must be consistent between sequencer and movie render graphs. Output settings mismatches can cause drift or duplicate frames. Scene visibility at each frame is driven by sequence track states. Okay, so I'm just going to go through this really quickly, just for you to understand what you need to have on. We will be checking it again on the engine, but it's just a quick refresher for you. So under plugins, just make sure that you have your movie render queue and your movie render queue additional render passes. That's the first thing that we need. When you're in your sequencer, you go the same way that you will go into your movie render queue. However, in there, you can choose to usually use your movie render graph instead of your preset. And then you want to go and create a new movie render graph. This is because you don't want to be using the default. It's easier just to create your own graphs and then you can reuse them, right? So when you first open your graph, this is what it's going to look like. It's automatically selected a JPEG sequence and a render layer, which we won't be really using, but we'll create our own when we go into it. So I'm going to explain to you some bits about what we're seeing right now. So your members resembles a components tab, includes variables, also inputs and outputs. Then you have your config graph. It functions exactly like the blueprint, event graph, or material graph. You got your details. So it functions exactly like the other details panels in Unreal. It displays the details or anything selected. You also have your active render settings. Displays the active setting being evaluated in the MRG. So when you go into your settings, you're going to see all of this that you have available, right? So you're going to have your conditionals, global variables, globals, output types, rendering settings, utilities, and then you're going to have your render graph nodes that are not categorized like your comments, right? Yeah. So you're going to have your global variables. This will return queried information. So that's your global variable for camera name, frame number, sequence name, and shot name. And then you got your camera settings, debug settings, execute script, and global game overrides. This can only be connected to the globals chain and once per render job than the other render layer globals only. Okay, so it's only globals. That's what you will find it under. Your output type nodes, file format types, EXR multilayer can only be applied globally and can only be used once per render job, not per layer. Additional output options are supported by the movie render graph through the command line encoder CLI utility node. However, we will not be covering that one today. So the movie render graph supports multiple concurrent per layer renderer nodes, options in the graph rendering and settings node. Your global output settings and your warm-up settings, again, are nodes that can only be applied to the globals chain and used once per render job. So the movie render graph utility nodes provide expanded functionality and more robust render graph creation, with the subgraph node being specifically useful for linking multiple render graph assets. Your apply console variable preset, command line encoder, and set console variable are nodes that can only be applied to the global chain and used once per render job again, while the remaining nodes can be applied on a per layer basis. Right, so this is a quick gone through the information, right? So let's go now into our demonstration. So let me press escape, open my Unreal file, and I'm going to explain a bit of what I've done here, right? So I have my sequencer open, and if it's not open for you, if you go under your content, you are going to see level sequencer, and then you can double click on it and it will appear. I have a movie render queue setting safe, but however, for this project, it don't matter. Again, I have my sequences here. I'm just going to go through it really quickly, play it, so make sure it's all working. Yep, it's working fine. It's 330 frames, I believe. Yep. It's all working good. Right. Okay. Let me come out of this mode. So we got a render. Our geometry is really our sword, and I parented the stand to it, so it's easier to rotate. Okay. So now, let's get into the good stuff. Let's go under our render settings, and automatically I put it here. I think it's easier just to use, so I'm going to snap it to where I want it here, right? As I mentioned earlier, let's choose first our movie render graph, so we know that we're going to be using that. You got your console variables overrides here, but for now, we're not going to use that. Then we're going to click on this again. And as you can see, it's going to open the default one, right? We do not want to do that. Let's click on the arrow again. And you see where it says create new asset. Let's create a new one, right? I'm going to save it on the level sequencer. And so what should we call it? Render graph underscore sword underscore render. Okay, so I know it's a render for the sword. And I'm going to click save. And as you can see, it automatically is saved over here. Before I do anything, I'm going to go File, Save All. Just because if it crashes, then you already have this set up. Okay? Right, so let's click on that. So what we're going to see now is, if you press Control, by the way, and scroll with your mouse, you can zoom in closer so you can see what we're doing, right? Okay. So you can see we got our members here, inputs, outputs, details, and then your graph. So we can evaluate the graph and it will tell you what's happening. So it's quite good. But for our purposes, we care about this. Let's see. So you got your warm-up settings. So again, it's going to do 64 frames before anything happens. I like to do that too. I used to do it in the movie render queue because it just warm up the settings. It will get rid of any errors normally, like flickering. Okay. Then you got your overrides, which are automatically on. I'm not going to change anything for this. It's on cinematic. You can choose which ones you want to be using. Global outputs, that's where everything you're going to decide where it's going to go for. At the moment, I'm going to tell it where I want to save my file, right? So click on that and then click on the three dots. I'm going to say on my desktop, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to name this movie render graph underscore render underscore sort. So I know what I'm doing. Double click on it and then say, select the folder. Right. I can also choose my resolution. So I know I want this to be 4K. I'm going all out today because I'm only using a PNG. And then I'm going to tell it, right, I want you to work at 24 frames, but then you can choose your frames. Okay. So that's the first thing I've done. Again, let's save. Save all. Right. So then you have your deferred renderer, and you can turn in here your sampling, and you can choose what's going to happen, anti-aliasing, and etc. Then you got a JPEG and your render layer. For my purposes, I don't need this. I'm gonna leave the render layer for I'm gonna leave the render layer for now. Couldn't speak there for a minute. Right. So we're gonna pull this and we're gonna say, right, what kind of render do I want to do? So I'm gonna search for PNG, and it's gonna say output type PNG, or you could go and say, right, I'm going to go to output type and choose what you want to be using, right? So for my purposes, again, PNG sequence. That's all I want to be using for today. I'm gonna get myself a bit more space because I think I'm going to need it. So I select it all, move it a bit. There we go. Right, so we got our PNG sequence. Right, what do we need next? So we need to tell it what we're rendering, right? So what do we want to render? We want to render the sort and the stand. So how I want to do it first is maybe I'll say, right, I want you to have the stand first, so then you can rotate and render it without the sort. And then after that, I can add the sort. I think that could work. I think, right? So let's try. Okay, so for that, we're going to need a collection. So if you search CO, it will automatically do it. It's under utility and it's called collection, right? So at the moment, the collection has no name. So under collection name, let's give it, let's think. This is going to be the stand that I'm going to be, no, this is going to be the sword that I'm going to, no, let's do the sword. It's going to be the sword I'm going to be removing because what I want to do is just show the stand, right? So I'll start with that, sword. And then we need to add a collection. So we need to tell it, right, what are we getting rid of? So again, expand it. And then you can see in here, you can do it by actor, actor layer, actor name, and etc. So for my purposes, I only want to do an actor. I'm going to choose my geometry by clicking on this little geometry with a plus sign. And then going to choose sword. And that's all I'm going to choose, right? If you had a big object, you could go into your scene, you could say, right, I'm going to have this, and then you can go into, ooh, don't go crazy, select, so edit, select, sorry, and then inverse selection, and it will select everything else, right? You could do that and then go into your movie render queue, and then you can say, right, I want to add selection on the outliner outside, and then it will select everything else. So that's an easy way of doing that. Let me just unselect everything just in case. Right. So all I've done is added my sword, right? So now we told what to do. So we got a sequence, then we're saying, right, in here we're going to have a collection, which is only the sword. And then we need to say, right, what are we going to do? So let's add a modifier now. Modifier. Okay. Then the modifier has no name, but this time I'm going to say sword, or we could start with modifier. So mod, and then sword. So pretty much it's just modifying the sword, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, right, what we're going to do is select the sword. So the collection, we know what we want to do, sword. And then what we want to do is tell it, right, I want you to create an alpha with that. So kind of pretty much hiding it, right? And then from there, once we're happy with that, we're going to select connect it to your render job. And we're going to name this something. So I'm going to say arf. Then this is going to be, in theory, the stand because we're hiding the sword. I'm going to Control A, Control C to copy it because your render layer has to match your outputs, right? So if we go back to your members and when you click on your output, we could just call it again. So R underscore stand. I don't know why I copied. Then if I wrote it, couldn't help myself. Right. And then file, save all. And in theory, and this in theory could go wrong, so let's find out. We're going to go to our movie render queue. Okay, let's make sure that I am on render. Yep, move render graph, and then just gonna click render. And you can see it's gonna start rendering, and it's missing the sort, right? But we have just the stand, and that's what we were after. Okay, so yay, it's working. Let's carry on. See the excitement there, real excitement. I wasn't sure if it was gonna work, but it did. Let's have more faith, eh? Right. So now what do we need to do? We need to add the sort, don't we? So we can pull another collection, and you can carry on doing this for hours and hours and hours. Just be careful you crash. And on that note, because we've done something and it worked, let's save all. Right. You never trust the engine, because it could crash, and it could be your fault because you didn't save and overloaded your memory. Imagine. Right. So again, we need another collection. And this time I'm gonna call this one a stand, right? Because I'm gonna hide the stand this time. I'm gonna create a collection group, but this time let's do something different. And let's hope this works again. I'm going to choose actor name. Nope. I'm going to choose actor tag name, right? And what I'm going to create is a name called a stand. I'm gonna copy this, because we're going to be doing something with this in a minute, right? So once I'm done it, while it's fresh in my mind, because I don't want to forget, let's go really quickly to your main level. I'm going to select my stand, and I'm going to search tag. And in here, can you see actor, advanced, tag, add, and I'm going to call it stand, okay? And then we're going to do the same with the stand number 2, add, and then stand. Okay. In theory, that should be enough, but we'll find out. Right. So again, because I've done something, I'm here. Let's just save all. Before it goes crazy, don't go crazy. Right. Right. So let's go back to our movie render graph. Let's zoom in a bit. Okay, so same thing. So we have our collection, and we have stand, and we tell it right this attack, right? Let's go and add a modifier again. So we're going to tell it what to do with that now. Oh no, don't do that. Modifier, please. You get happy trigger and click on the other one. So this time it's going to be a mod, but for the stand, right? Mod stand. Cool. Do we trust it? I don't know. We'll find out. So for this, again, we need to tell it what collection we're using. So we know it's this one, which is a stand. And we don't need to create the alpha anymore. So we're going to go and add the is hidden. So we're saying, right, I don't want to see that one on here. Okay, let's see if that's true. Okay, then we're going to click render. Render layer. Let's just see everything is okay. Okay, let's turn this on, and I'm gonna call it render, and this is going to be sword, because that's what we're rendering, right? And then let's see if this time I actually do copy it and use it to make my life easier, right? Because I don't want to be writing it again. Same name has to go. So we have an output, and it's like, oh God, how do we add another output now? Well, it's not that bad. If we go back to the members where we changed the last one, we can also add. So let's add one. So in here, let's make a life easier again, and just click and paste it, right? Sword. And then, okay, I'm going to click, right. So if everything goes well in my render, let's find out. So save all again, because I don't want it to crash. It's gonna go, let's see, render local. Let's see what happens. Ooh, look at that. Right, so it's gonna warm up. Okay, so now we have the render of the stand and the render of the sword. See, it wasn't that bad. Thank you for Unreal 5.7. It's made this process so much easier compared to 5.4. Right, so I'm gonna let it render really quickly. 222. There we go, look at that. Happy days. Right, so we have that. amazingly, right? So let's see if we can do something else. So we have our settings, and it could have been anything, right? You could also, like I was saying, add your sample count, your anti-aliasing if you wanted to. So let's try that. And maybe don't want to go too crazy because I don't want to crash the computer, or I don't want to be here for hours. One thing that I did want to mention is this. So let's span on this a bit. If we turn this off really quickly, I don't think I need to write. So if we right click, you're going to see here some output directories, resolution, and everything. So you could add nodes and make actual variables, which is quite interesting. So let's put output directory, right? Cool, yes, that's what we have here. But what if we right click on it and promote to variable? Now we have a variable for our output directory, which gives us a lot more control, right? And we can do the same for other things. So like the resolution, and then promote to variable, and you can see they're appearing here. So we can reuse them for other things. And then lastly, why not? Because I already did that. Frame rate. Promote to variable. And then you have some cool variables that you can control. So yeah. So pretty much this is what I wanted to show you. Is again, it's simple once you start to understand it, right? I think it's quite handy to know. It gives you so much power to control your renders. Again, instead of using a PNG, you could use an EXR, and then you can control a lot more then. Remember, you can control your OSIO colors. You can control a lot of things in here. So it's very powerful. I would recommend that you go and explore it even further. I'm going to put some links underneath the presentation and share them with you so you can actually have more fun and explore, right? Okay, so just in case, let's try to render again and see what happens, because I increased that, didn't I? Right. So you can see it's happening. It's warming up. It might take a tiny bit longer now because I've increased that. Yeah, and you can see it's rendering a bit smaller, a bit slower now because of the anti-aliasing that we added. But it's looking a lot better, to be honest. Again, I'm going to be sharing this file with what I've done, and I will be sharing the slides later on. So it's easier for you to follow along and create your own version. And hopefully you find this useful. We're almost there. But as you can see, it takes a lot longer. And I'm not stopping it so you can see this in real time. I do have a powerful computer, so as you can tell, it's not taking as long as it should. So be careful when you turn things on your computer because it could crash. So what do we do before we do anything? Save. Top tip of the week, save your work. And I tell my students the same, always save your work, right? And that's done, it's rendered, we're happy. So I'm gonna file, save it all. I'm gonna close this now, I'm happy with this. I'm gonna close this now and then save all again. And then I'm going to zip the project, desktop, and save. Okay. I'm gonna say MRG and then public. Right, so that's gonna be safe and then save it. So I'm zipping it for you guys, and this is the top tip to file, zip project. We'll zip your project without any extra info that you need on your file, right? So I'm gonna close that and I will be uploading this later, right? So let's go back to our slides. Okay, so let's see. So some troubleshooting problems that you could have. So let's think about this. So if you have no output, you could be missing your render layer. And it's simple as add at least one render layer node in your information. Remember to have the same name in your output as I mentioned earlier, because that could also cause a problem. If you have the wrong resolution, per layer override active, check per layer settings. If you're missing object IDs, path tracer renderer could be the cause, switch to deferred. If the layer is not isolated, it could be the wrong collection filter. So like we were using earlier, it could be that you're not using a tag or you're not using the correct thing. So double check it, right? and use the result button because it will give you the actual answer. If you got a OCO mismatch, it could be wrong config applied, mashup pipeline, OCO config. Cryptomate's missing. It used to be a bug on 5.5. It should be fixed now on 5.6 and 7. So I thought this could be handy, so I thought I'll share it. Even though I'm not showing you how to use it, I think you can look it up. But I think these are really handy console variables, and I put them in there for you so you can just copy and paste them, right? So your fog and 0, it will disable your fog. And it will be recommended for environment passes, right? Ambient occlusion levels, disables ambient occlusion, layers that will be relayed in post. So it gives you so much more control. Post-process A quality 3, reduces A quality, pre-comp layers or low priority elements. So save your memory, don't kill your computer if you don't have to. Motion blur quality, disables motion blur for layers to be motion comped in post, right? Temporal A samples 64 increases anti-aliasing sample count, and again cinematic quality edges, so it's quite handy and very important. So shadow max resolution 4096 is higher resolution shadows, hero shots with visible shadows, and then again you can put this to 8K if you're brave. So lumen reflections, higher quality lumen reflections, reflective surfaces if you're rendering a nice, I don't know, a kitchen or a car, that will be handy. So RSSGI quality 4, screen space global illumination quality, interior lighting fidelity, right? So, sorry. So MRG offers flexibility, modularity, and pro-grade outputs. Supports layering, automation, advanced color management, right? So some next steps: build a personal library of subgraphs and C-bars. It'll be really useful for your everyday workflow. Stay updated with Epic's MRG documentation, and I cannot say this enough. There's enough information out there for you to be able to just understand the subject, right? And experts from Unreal are always putting information in there, so really good plug. I made a little checklist for you. So what I would say is level sequence set is correct. Lead shot, yes, you can tick that. Next, we have frame rate matches, sequencer and output. Collection filters correctly set for each layer. C-bar supply, global or per layer. Output token set and tested. This space available. Remember, if you're doing EXR, it will take a bit of space. Graph save a soft graph template. Evaluate graph run without errors. Test render completed with first frame. And yeah, and finally, just remember, right? Treat your movie render graph like a blueprint for rendering. Even though you don't have the same information, it's pretty much the same, but created just for rendering. So it's amazing. The cleaner and more modular your graph, the easier it is to reuse, automate, and troubleshoot. So make it easier for people to understand. And put comments in there. If you're working with a team, the team will be grateful for that they know what they're looking at. Each render layer chain is a building block. Once you master collections, modifiers, and outputs, you can scale your pipeline to any production size. And lastly, I put some links in there for you to look at, right? So you got core learning, some specific techniques that will be handy, and then some reference documentation. Again, the Dev Epic Games .com, your developer forums, this is full of information. I couldn't say that word for a minute. So I would recommend it. Have a read, have a look. There's a lot of information there from really helpful people and from Unreal themselves. So again, have a look, and yeah, I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. I tried to make it nice enough for everyone to understand, but specifically, like I was saying, for an intermediate to advanced audience, right? But hopefully everyone will take something out of this. Anyways, until next time, I hope you enjoyed this and see you later. Peace.